There we go. We'll be live in just a little bit. 90 seconds and counting.
We got a mic check.
Chat.
The
They can
chat.
tell us if the mic's working.
Please and thank you.
Nice. Okay, William, Lena, they're already there. Try to get that there.
Still need.
You gonna keep it here, or do you-
I don't really care which one we watch. That was just that popular.
No time. There's no time.
I'm about to say, it was like, where's the
All right, 9 o'clock, and we're ready to rock. So here's how tonight's going to work. First, welcome to election night with us.
on your back deck?
I think it's a pretty good setup, personally. I've become quite comfortable out here, if I do say so.
No, this is a very comfy couch.
No, so what we're
I
going to
could
do
take a nap on this couch.
is we will hopefully not fall asleep. Hopefully we won't embarrass Apex Friendship.
That will probably embarrass Apex.
But we're going to try to make sure that we give you guys as much accurate information as possible. So, who are you pulling for tonight?
I mean, I don't think we can really say that.
Oh, that's right. We're not going to say who we're pulling for, and we're not going to lean any which way. All we hope that it is a clean election, that we get some clear results tonight. Even if it's not a final result tonight, we do hope that it is a clean result. And you and I have talked several times and answered several questions about what's going to happen tonight. Moral story? What's the moral story?
We don't really know, but I honestly, I think that's really changed in the last 4 hours. The amount of, I don't think we're going to have the official, because right now we still have like the definite. So for example, like Indiana called super early for President Trump. Kentucky got called super early for President Trump. Mitch McConnell has already won his Senate seat back. And then you have the other New Hampshires and Vermonts and, the strongholds for the Democrats and the Republicans. All those states win. What I found interesting was
let's go ahead and pull the map up. So what we'll do at each kind of 30 minutes or so, we'll give you if you're just joining us, which for everybody now, everybody's just joining us so far. So let's go ahead and pull that map up. We'll kind of stay down in the corner, and then we'll bring that map over to the side. Or in fact,
that doesn't really work that well.
No, but we'll keep that map right.
Realize this is the first time we've ever done this.
It is.
So, this can either go really good, really bad, or somewhere right in the middle.
Right now, we're shooting for right in the middle.
Right.
Yeah, no big surprises so far, though.
No, I mean, I think what's really interesting is that let's talk about process and how every network though has different process how they call elections.
Sure.
We had this right before air was CNN, which is the one that I had on just because when I showed up here, it was YouTube TV. It was just convenient.
We do have PBS in the background, but it's muted. We're going to give you a better scoop.
They were still calling Virginia a tough race. They were still saying they did not declare Virginia to Joe Biden. But then NPR did. They declared it to Joe Biden. I'm looking at the TV right now as PBS is saying that Louisiana is going to go to President Trump with 0% of the polling. I mean, that just kind of shows you that every CNN, NPR, Fox, ABC, NBC, they're all going to say very different stuff.
Right.
They're all going to be correct. It's just how early are they willing to make the call?
And a lot of the predictions that you'll see will be different than when the AP officially calls a state. So when the AP officially calls a state, which is what you're seeing right now in New Mexico going to Joe Biden, that's when they've looked at enough votes.
Yeah.
They've looked at enough predictors from different areas that they feel confident on. So again, nothing surprising has happened. But what you're going to see is us start to narrow in on various small areas. Like very soon here in the next 5 or 10 minutes, we're going to start talking about Miami-Dade.
Yeah, that's
we're
been
gonna
the big
start talking
thing.
about Ohio and areas of Virginia. First quick update though, the Biscuits did win the regular season championship tonight.
Do they get a ring?
No rings at this level, but I think there might be a biscuit party. But there are playoffs though. There are playoffs. So we've won the regular season championship.
Okay.
It was 2 for 3 at the plate.
That's good.
Solid play in right field.
Solid play.
Even the out was like really hard hit to shortstop.
That's good.
Really. Anyway, we just want to make sure that we keep you up to date on the important things. Now,
Well, that was our sports segment.
it was. And now back to our politics.
Yes.
No, so let's talk about Miami. So
Okay.
let's just go ahead and dive right in. You guys all know, first person to get 270 electoral votes wins.
Mm-hmm.
Does the popular vote matter? Let's get some of the big picture things.
No, it doesn't. This is a stat that I saw on the news this morning, was that the popular vote has been won by the last several Democratic nominees.
Yes.
All right, because of course Obama won it, and then Clinton won it, and vice versa. It does not matter, and that's where we really start looking at Florida. And this is why Miami-Dade County. But when I was watching the election coverage before I came over here, that was the big concern for Joe Biden and Vice President Biden's party, or not party, but his campaign right now, is that the turnout for him in Miami-Dade County wasn't as strong as it was for Clinton.
No.
And why that matters is that if you look at a map if you go to like the 270 House seat or the 2016 New York Times map that we were looking at in class the other day, it's majority red. And so the Democrats are hopeful for like the voter turnout in these cities. Clinton won Miami-Dade County with 60% of the vote.
I saw that. So she was at 63%. Joe Biden is now looking at a 54% lead in Miami County.
Mm-hmm.
Not it's Broward County, but it's Miami-Dade area. So when you look at Florida, which we've pulled up here, there's several different links that we'll kind of go to throughout the night. It really is leaning heavily like we think that President Trump will take Florida.
Yeah.
And it's because down here, when you look at Miami, when you look at Broward County, you see Joe Biden is up to a 65% lead.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the vote turnout, the numbers aren't as high.
Yeah, so
the
there was
amount of votes is not there.
It wasn't. Clinton
Even
had
though it
about
says
600,000 votes, and then President Trump in the last election had about 300,000 votes.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I looked at it, it was pretty even.
So here's where, just to kind of recap, Broward County, huge margins, exceeding turnout or exceeding expectations. You drop down to Miami-Dade, which has a Cuban influence as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to be able to touch briefly on a few things of who is voting and how those votes look. This, with 92% of the vote in, this is where Joe Biden is not running up the margins that he thought he would be within Miami itself. Now, that being said, the reason that Florida has not been called for Donald Trump yet is because all of these areas throughout rural Florida are much closer than they were in the past. And so when President Trump won in 2016, he was able to run up huge margins in these areas. But if you'll see, Tampa is still close, and areas outside of Tampa are closer than they had been in the past. And so that's just a little bit of update as we kind of scan the various counties kind of throughout Florida. Also, another little tidbit for Florida, the Panhandle closes later. You've got 2 different time zones. You've got the Atlantic time zone and the Central time zone. These counties that here are going to close later. That's what happened in 2000. That was so crazy.
Yeah.
They had called Florida for Gore early, and so people in the Panhandle hadn't even finished voting yet. And so that's one thing that you have seen change over the years, that will no longer happen. States and major news organizations will not call a race until all polls are closed. And that sounds elementary, but again, that's something that we kind of learned in 2000.
No, I mean, that's important too. I mean, that's why you're looking at here, Michigan is like that. The bottom half of the UP that's connected to Wisconsin is in a different time zone. El Paso, Texas is in the mountain time zone. And so, I mean, it all depends on, and a lot of times it all depends on how the state structures their election laws.
Yes.
So we see that example today. Again, North Carolina, we knew it was going to be a massive state for the election. And of course, they make national news right off the bat by having to delay the results.
Yes, because of 4 polling locations.
For 4 polling locations, and they weren't able to announce all the early votes and absentee votes until all the polling locations were closed. That's not the same for every state. And so it's early. There's still a long time to go. We're going to talk about the president's race. We're going to talk about governor's races, the Senate's race. We're going to talk some school board stuff. We're following all that on Twitter.
Wait, so it's not just the president on the ballot tonight?
No, it's everybody. It's the state of North Carolina. It is, you have the president, you have senators, you have the senator, you have the governor, you have school board elections, you have the superintendent election. Our ballot was front and back.
Yes.
And I think it was probably at least 40 voted seats that we were voting for. There was a fair amount.
So again, and we're going to touch on all those things. We aren't just going to stay on the presidential level. And that's kind of what we're going to do, just to give you a little bit of an idea of what the night will look like. We will try to cycle through all those topics a little bit, roughly every 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then whenever there is major breaking news, we will clearly audible and go to that, because who knows what the night has in store. It's not like class. We don't have a clear plan of exactly everything that we're going to do.
No. I mean, is that? I feel like that is like class.
Well,
we don't really have a clear plan. But I think what's really interesting is they go back to how looking at different sites, they're going to give you different results. What we have on the television right now is that we have Biden currently has 119, Trump has 92. I'm looking at, I got up right here, 73, Trump 48. So some networks are willing to call stuff early compared to other networks, and some networks, again, they may have a more stringent process, or they may have, again, some checks, some boxes they have to check in order to call stuff. What's really important to understand is that the anchors are the ones not making the call. There's people that are in a room,
yes,
that fully just pay attention to this, and they're the ones that say, listen, you cannot make this call. They're the math people.
There was a whole episode on a certain show, Newsroom, by the way, and they went into depth about what those people were like, and how they are completely isolated out on election night. So because it really is their Super Bowl, if you will. A couple of things before we go to, we've also got some correspondence tonight. So there's a couple of different aspects of the show tonight. We do have some students that wanted to be a part of it, which is the whole reason why we do this.
Yep.
So we've got a couple of students that we're going to bring up so that our students are hopefully listening. Friends and family. We've got some friends in South Carolina listening. Bryant, who's been on the podcast.
My sister, who's also been on the podcast, she was on. Don't know if she's still on, but she made a comment.
Exactly. So all of everybody that's watching at home, hopefully that we are exceeding expectations and probably just looking into a new career really after this thing takes off.
Anything could be making us more money. Anything, really.
Really just looking for Chick-fil-A once a month is what it comes down to. All right, so what we're going to do is we are actually going to go to Leah first. So we've got two students who are going to focus on the Biden campaign, and then we're going to go to Lena with the Trump campaign. So Leah.
Hey guys, how are y'all? How are y'all doing?
Good, Leah. How are you doing? Fine.
I'm doing great today. I'm doing great.
Excellent. So how is the Biden camp feeling so far?
We're feeling optimistic, a little bummed out about Florida, but we're still feeling good about the more Midwest states like Michigan and Wisconsin. And we still have more plans to victory so far. And we're happy about Vermont.
Yeah, excellent. Vermont, I mean, you have to pick up the layups.
Yes.
Vermont as well, again, is clearly we're going to go to Biden. You still need to pick up those layups. Ohio is doing really good for Biden right now.
Yeah.
All right. What do you think's the chances, Leah, that Biden wins Ohio?
I think it's pretty high. I think he can pull through with it. And I think if he can pull through with Ohio, he has better chances. In North Carolina, I think it will make everything else look better and be more optimistic. So
does the losing out on Florida for Biden, but maybe picking up Ohio and North Carolina, is that sort of a net there? Is that kind of just cancels each other out there?
Yeah, it does. It does cancel each other out, actually, yeah.
It really seems like the Biden camp is excited about finding a way to pick up just one of those states. Because if they can kind of pick up Florida or Ohio or a state that the Trump campaign really depends on, then I think that could be big for the Biden campaign. Is that what you're doing there?
Yes.
All right. Well, we're going to go back to the Biden campaign later on in the night.
Yes.
But let's pivot over to Lena. Oh, look! I didn't know I could do that. We've got all three of you on the screen now. Lena, talk to us about how the Trump campaign is feeling right now.
Well, right now, I mean, it's nothing really surprising happening. All of the main Republican states are staying Republican. Right now, as it looks at, Florida is going to go to Trump, and most likely Georgia will too. And I mean, that's pretty good for him, considering that they're both swing states this year.
Georgia, I think, is the big one. That Florida, we knew it was going to be like a toss-up. Florida is always a swing state. It's going to be a swing state for the rest of my lifetime. Georgia was one of those states, though, that was very interesting early on, and up until this election, is that people thought that Georgia could be a toss-up state. Georgia and Texas kind of got thrown together in those states where the Democrats could have a legitimate shot of winning. And so that's very important for the Republican Party and for President Trump to win those seats, to win that state, I should say. Because while those are not layups, that's your free throw. Those are the ones you have to hit. You have to make sure you win Texas. You have to make sure you have to win Georgia. What state are you looking at that you're hoping that President Trump wins next?
Well, probably just process of elimination for what he should be winning next. I'd say Texas, but right now that's really close from what I'm looking at. It's 50 and 48. So if he wins that will be a lot better for him than if Biden wins it.
It's funny. She's already jumping the gun on Texas. I feel like that's something that the Biden and Trump campaigns have been on really early on.
Yeah.
Texas is kind of the white whale, if you will, of the Democratic Party right now. If they can get Texas, then that completely changes the map. And the Republican Party and President Trump really have to hold strong there and try to hold on to it.
Yeah, so right now,
you'll see, we've kind of got four screens going on right now. We've got the Biden campaign and the Trump campaign with some statistics on Georgia specifically. So when you look at Georgia, you do see a substantial lead from Donald Trump statewide. Yeah. But we've only got about a third of the votes in so far. And so what you're going to see is something that you're going to see us talk about over and over and over tonight. What kind of coalition is Joe Biden going to be able to pull together? And what kind of coalition is Trump or another group of voters? How can they pull different groups of voters together? And you're going to hear us talk about the suburbs, the suburbs, the suburbs. And that's where you're kind of waiting to see a bunch of vote tallies around Atlanta.
So what I think is also really important to understand, too, is that we don't know, without looking up every individual state, and let's be real, we're not CNN here, we're not Fox News, we don't have the interns to do that. But every state, those that early voting, so let's just take North Carolina. North Carolina is at 80% reporting. That's because we were able to count all our absentee and early votes, right away. And so when that 8:15 time hit, we were able to just say, hey, here are the numbers. Where in other states, they haven't been able to do that. All right, they've only been able to do the absentee ballots, but they've not been able to do early voting. So, we don't know if it says that. So, for example, that Georgia, that 37%. All right, you have to do your own little research into that. Is that people who voted today? Is that early voters? All right, is that early voters and absentee? Is it all three of them? What does that 33% or 37% really actually represent? All right, which I think is really key.
Well, I tell you what, let's kind of dive into that for a little bit. Lena, we're going to come back to you guys in roughly an hour or so, unless we've got some breaking news. But both of you, Ms. Stein, Ms. Manzo, that was a fabulous job. We appreciate you coming on, and we look forward to talking to you more later on. Thank you, guys.
Nice.
So let's go ahead and kind of spotlight Georgia for a little bit.
Okay.
We were just talking about that. I think it's interesting that you bring up one. You can tell Dana is really in a good mood after the Biscuits win, and she feels sorry for us out here in the cold that she actually brought me some of the coffee that we just brewed. though.
That's the mug I just bought.
That
was
one.
the
The
mug.
mug is fantastic. Two, I'm really happy that I did that.
Yes.
Let's talk about how different states talk about their votes. Let's talk briefly for a little bit.
Okay.
Because that is really, really different. Some states will start with their mail-in votes, and they've been counting them for days, if not weeks. And so when those ballots come in first, then those are the ones that are already counted. So when you're looking at when they polls closed and they had 40% of votes already tallied, that means they had their mail-in votes counted. On the flip side, though, let's talk about the Rust Belt 3 for a minute.
Yeah.
And Willow Jones will be our correspondent later in the hour talking about the Rust Belt 3. They do not do that.
No.
When we say the Rust Belt 3, which is a phrase we'll say repeatedly through the night.
Talking about Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin.
That's the 3.
Yeah.
Ohio is closer than we thought, which will kind of get thrown in that same loop. And Minnesota, if that one's close.
Yeah.
But it's that same, and it's called the Rust Belt because it used to be the iron and steel manufacturing, which is not there anymore as much. And some of those cities aren't what they used to be. And they're just kind of changing and continuing to diversify. So do those states, which had been known as a blue wall for Democrats for the last generation, really, and Donald Trump was able to seal the presidency, winning all 3 of those with narrow margins. But that was what gave President Trump his victory in 2016. Those 3 states, how do they do with mail-in ballots? How is that looking recently?
It's complicated for all 3. So Pennsylvania is probably the most complicated state when it comes to the presidential election so far. They've had some of their counting precincts come out and say we're not even going to start counting the early votes, the mail-in ballots, the absentee ballots until tomorrow. Like they're going to be they're too busy today. They're too busy counting the votes today that they're not going to start counting all the early voting until tomorrow. Which again, unless if Pennsylvania is close, then Pennsylvania cannot get called tonight. And none of the news networks can really call Pennsylvania. Looking at the TV right now, they're saying it's Biden 65, Trump 34. But again, there's less than 11% of the votes in already. And we could be at 80%, and that's 80% for the rest of the night. Michigan, there's a decent chance I think Michigan actually gets some sort of result tonight. They were able to open up all their ballots. And so that's the big thing is you got to understand that like taking the ballot, all right, comes in an envelope. You actually then have to open it up to like count it and scan it. And so they were
exponentially longer.
So they were able to start that process of opening up the ballot so it was ready to get counted the other day. And so they were talking about how they did about 100,000 votes already today of the early, and they expect to do probably 100,000 more. And so there's a decent chance that Michigan can get called tonight. Wisconsin, I also think is a decent chance to get called tonight. Now, Wisconsin,
really?
Yes, I do. I think there is going to be a lead by one of the parties that it's going to be. I should say, maybe not call tonight, but I think that you get a lot more of the. I don't think it's going to be the next day is going to decide it. So right now, you got President Trump at 49.2. You got 3% reporting. You got to give it again. I think those Wisconsin, I'm looking at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm probably still
be
up.
shocked if we are able to call any one of those 3 or 4 states while we are still on the air.
If I was going to pick,
unless we go
now, when you say 4, are you talking
bonus round?
Are you talking about Minnesota or Ohio?
I'm talking about Ohio.
So I think if you're going to give me those 4, I think Michigan will get called. I think Michigan has the shot to get called.
I like these little side conversations. I'm taking Ohio first.
Okay.
I think Ohio gets called first. I think Ohio is going to still remain extremely close.
Okay.
But you know what? Before we get too deep into the weeds on these Rust Belt states, I want to bring it back home for a little bit.
Okay.
I want to talk about the Carolinas. I want to talk about North Carolina and South Carolina. And we've got 2 correspondents that are helping us with those states as well. So we've got Raquel Grant, Quinn Campbell, all joining us here. There we go. So we've got North Carolina and South Carolina, which are both, obviously we've talked about how North Carolina is a big swing state as far as presidential race goes for the Electoral College. South Carolina, not as much. South Carolina's already been called for President Trump.
Yeah.
Raquel, how about, since you're covering the South Carolina Senate race, how about you talk to us a little bit about how things are looking down there in my home state, the greatest state of the union, probably the most complicated and most proud of our flag, that's for sure. Raquel, how are things looking down there for Lindsey Graham or Jamie Harrison?
Okay, so Lindsey Graham is actually polling pretty good. It's not as good as we thought it was going to be because in a lot of the forecasts, it had Lindsey Graham getting about like 66%. But now with a lot of the voting coming in, it's a little bit closer. It's having most of the polls have Lindsey Graham at about 54% and Jamie Harrison at about 45%. But that's a lot closer for Jamie Harrison because he was expecting, a lot less close of a race with a lot of the forecast. So we're thinking that it's not looking the best for Jamie Harrison, but we still shouldn't count him out because there are a lot of mail-in ballots that are still to be looked at. So we don't know.
Sure, I think that's a great thing. Great reporting from the state of South Carolina as well from Ms. Grant. When you look at kind of where the tallies are and where the votes have been brought in from South Carolina, Greenville County here, which obviously I have a large affinity to. That's where Furman is.
Okay.
Not only do we have Swans and also an illustrious institution there.
I just want to make it very clear that Coach Sanders went to a school that has Swans on its campus.
We do. And it was fantastic.
Just want to be, and the school is smaller than Apex Friendship.
Yes.
In student population.
Yes. We could win some football games.
Just want to put that out.
Now,
put that out
there.
I'll
also tell you something about Greenville County. We only have 1% of the vote in so far. Mm-hmm. This, in my opinion, is where South Carolina is going to be won and lost, is in the upstate. We have a pretty good idea of what the rural vote is going to look like in South Carolina. We have a pretty good idea of what the coastal vote is going to look like in South Carolina. It's right up here in the upstate between Greenville County, where Furman is, and York County, where I grew up. Those two counties are grayed out because of the limited number of votes that are already in. And those are the areas that we're going to continue to go back to over and over and over again. Now, Raquel's giving us a great update on South Carolina. Let's bring it back home to currently
North
where
Carolina.
We all live. Quinn, what is going on with this North Carolina Senate race I've never seen anything like it?
So earlier Tom Tillis was leading by a lot, but now it's pretty close. Cal Cunningham has 48.6% of the votes and Tom Tillis has 47.3%. A lot of the third-party votes are going to Shannon Bray and Kevin Hayes, who are both right-wing. Shannon Bray has 3% and Kevin Hayes has 1.2%. A lot of those votes are being taken away from Tom Tillis. But, yeah, no counties are final right now. Like, it could change, but right now Cal Cunningham is ahead.
Kyle Cunningham is ahead, and we're about like 81% reported in, and that's the reason why the number is so big is that North Carolina had about 90% of the people who voted in 2016, did early voting or absentee, which is just an astronomical number. I mean, I think early voting is a thing that is going to be here to stay. I think a lot more people are going to do early voting absentee because it was my first time ever doing early voting, and I found it very easy. Now, Cal Cunningham has had a pretty good campaign until the last month. So what happened to Cal Cunningham in this sort of last 6 weeks that made it be this race a lot closer than what people thought it was going to be 2 months ago?
Well, some information about an affair or whatever that he had came out, and that actually kind of made his numbers go up among male voters, which I don't know. But anyways, that made his numbers kind of go up among male voters, but also it made some people less likely to vote for him. Like, I know my grandma was telling me that she was going to vote for him until she found out about that. And then now she's not voting for him anymore. So that definitely harmed him some.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was interesting as WRAL did the poll like a week after. And they said that when they conducted this poll, it was after the affair became public. and he went up 3 points. Like that's stuff you see in movies or television shows. Like it's stuff when they make the joke after is like, oh, you've now become more relatable. Like that's the joke you would make after that. But I've never seen someone have an affair and they go up in points. But I think it's now that's been Tillis's kind of game plan for the last month. Is just attacking. I know at home I've seen every Tom Tillis ad I've seen. King Cal Cunningham, it has always had military vets in there.
Yes.
Because of his military connection and then the affair that he had in that that connection. So we're going to come back to you guys next hour and see. And at that point, there's a decent chance that we can see a much clearer picture of how this election is going to go with the United States Senate in North Carolina and South Carolina.
Absolutely. So thank you guys both for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll see you in about an hour. Just fantastic from both of them. Just fantastic. Good in-depth reporting. Even talking to Grandma to get the update.
So we have some breaking news. This is the biggest shocker of the night, I think.
Go ahead.
The Democrat from Massachusetts won the Senate seat. Biggest shocker of the night. And Markey, he won the Senate seat, beat Kevin O'Connor, 67% to 33%. I would say that it's only 13% reporting, so it's not official yet. I do apologize. The Associated Press has already called the race.
And just in case you guys are curious, I think that's important to bring out. We are going to go off of what the Associated Press and what NPR go off of, because those are the two most well-respected organizations that we can use, and that's what the AP is going to go off of. So I'm trying to scroll through the chat here a little bit, and somebody was talking about how can you call a state when there's only 14% reporting,
and I go back to
20%.
How those people.
Bias?
It's not media bias.
No.
It is. Those are the people. Those are the math people in the back of the room. Those are the math people, and again, Newsroom's a fantastic show, and this is where I get it from. But those people are the ones. They have done the formulas. They've done the algorithms. They know. Again, so if you take like a Georgia, all right, let's just say you call it early for Georgia,
Okay.
because you know what the voting turnout's going to be in Atlanta. And you know whatever happens in the rest of the state of Georgia, Atlanta's going to overcome that. The same thing here in Massachusetts, all right, 14% have been reported so far, and we're already able to call it a senator's race because they can see that the Republican areas in Massachusetts compared to the Democratic areas, there's a more Democratic show out than there are Republicans. All right, and that's all done by algorithm formulas, and they know what they're looking for. They do not like being wrong in this situation. And so the AP, a lot of these other news networks, they're not going to try to call a race early, especially in this election year, because they know that lots at stake for them.
You know, that's an important thing you bring up is in this election cycle.
Yeah.
Because this election cycle, you can't just call South Carolina for Lindsey Graham and just hope that it works out. You can't just, especially when we're talking about swing states as far as the presidential vote is concerned, you can't just call North Carolina because it's 100. You hope that it works out.
Yeah.
Even with the House races or the governor's race, you can't do that because it would really pull back bad on your industry. And that's one of the polling industries. So we'll talk about polling for a little bit.
Okay.
Pollsters really feel like they're trying to get this year's done correctly because they are worried that, look, polling information, when you really looked at it for 2016, took a hard hit.
I don't know.
Polling information in 2016 really took a hard hit because it missed President Trump winning. But when you looked at the detail of it, the national polls stayed the same. And then the intermediate polls, on the state level, also were within the margin of victory, but not as accurate as they thought they were.
That solved it.
What?
Whatever you used it. Okay. Well, then maybe. Oh, it's because you toggled.
I kind of toggled again.
There we go. You toggled. There we go. We toggled North Carolina. I just didn't want them still up.
No, we're good.
That's good.
So several things going on. Now, I think we need to go back up and kind of reset ourselves for a little bit. We're at 9:30. Time is flying by, in my opinion.
Yes.
So let's kind of take a step back. Let's look at the national map. And I think we need to go into depth into pick a state. We've got lots of options.
I want to talk about Texas right now
Let's talk about Texas.
because I want to talk Texas is getting
Any kind of big picture updates we need to get of anybody?
It looks. Let's see if we go back before we talk about Texas. Let's see what races the AP has called.
So we're sitting at. I've got to toggle here so I can pull that up on the screen. We've actually got it so that it is called 122 for Joe Biden and 92 for Donald Trump. With that being said, against there are no shockers. Looking at the upper Midwest, the Dakotas, SEC country, minus Georgia and Florida. Really no big shockers yet. Again, it's when Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, any of those get called, then that's a big deal.
And that's when you're going to see in kids, if you remember from that 270 win map, when it is a dark blue or a dark red, that's when it's called. Or if you see a check mark. So even looking at South Dakota only 12% reported so far. AP's already called the South Dakota for President Trump. And so it basically, if it had dark red and it had a check mark there. That's why looking at New Mexico. New Mexico has already called with 32% reporting for Joe Biden. All right, and that's the blue check mark.
I tell you what, I need a moment before we go to Texas.
Okay. Do you need to share something?
And I don't know. Yes, I do want to share something. Ohio is looking bluer and bluer.
He's crushing it. So Joe Biden is crushing it in Ohio.
So when we say that, when you look at these highly populated counties in Ohio, which I have up on the screen here, actually no, I don't. Let me, which I will have up on the screen in just a second. When you look at Ohio, on that big map, it had gone from toss-up to light blue. Mm-hmm. Now, when we say that, and what we're talking about when we talk about Ohio being light blue more, it's because more and more counties are coming in with more detailed polling results with large Biden margins. Summit County, for example, 100% of the votes in, Democratic margin of plus 34. Solidly in the Biden camp. And I'm not going to expand all the counties, but when you look at these major areas, don't look at this map and see that's a lot of red. Trump must be winning.
No, I mean, we talked about that in class.
This is
you can't look at it all.
32,000.
Yeah.
That's got 13,000. All right, but on the flip side, when you look here, that's 500,000 in Summit. And these major metropolitan areas are going more and more for Biden than they thought. And just to zoom back out, and then I want to go to Texas with you. If Biden is able to pull off Florida, which I don't think he will.
No, I don't think so.
But if he were to pull off Ohio, then Trump's path to victory becomes very, very, very thin.
Yep.
So I think that things like that are important to look at. Let's go through and let's talk about Texas for a little bit. And then I'm going to pull up what it would have to take for, well, here, I can just do it real fast here.
What map you
want? I had the NPR map up. But if you were to go through, and let's already give Florida, again, this is not official. I'm just kind of walking you through the path of what could happen. Mm-hmm. President Trump's path to victory, if Ohio goes blue, becomes very, very thin. He would have to flip then 2 of these states up here. I mean, it gets very thin.
It gets dicey
for President Trump to get to 270 if he were to lose Ohio. He would have to take Michigan and Pennsylvania, as well as run the table in North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. So basically, President Trump can handle losing one of these, but then it turns into him having to almost run the table in the rest of these toss-up states. Now, I feel more than fine toggling over and talking about your new favorite state to focus on.
Texas.
The great state of Texas, which might be the only state in the union that cares about its flag more than my home state is.
Texas cares about everything more, I feel like, than any other state.
I have had some of the best barbecue in Austin, Texas.
Did you go to Frank's? Or what's that? Is it Frank's is like the famous one?
There's about 15 famous
ones.
Well,
Frank's is the one that's like you got to wait in line.
There's 10 of them.
Three.
No, so we thought we could get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get there. And we showed up about probably 8.
Yeah.
Wrapped around the building.
They were like, no shot. No. So Texas is really interesting. It's really, really interesting. Since honestly the Beto O'Rourke Senate campaign.
Okay.
When he narrowly lost. That was a very close Senate race. To an incumbent, a long-term incumbent in Ted Cruz, sort of one of those people who's kind of considered a mainstay in the Senate. He's
sure.
one of these.
I've got the map up for you now that it's with only. I mean, they've got 3/4 of the vote in, and President Trump is not even up a whole percentage point.
Yeah, and when we talk about that El Paso region, very Democratic area.
Yes, I've got a stat for you for El Paso. Keep going.
A very Democratic area of El Paso, that still has to come in. And so that's where we're talking about where President Trump has to win. So when we were talking in class, we talking about top section of Texas where you have like 3,000 people, 800 people, sometimes even 400 people live in those counties. He's got to rack up all those votes there because he's going to have to make up for all the votes he's going to lose in El Paso. And so this is going to be a really, really close race. It's all going to change. What was the voting turnout in El Paso? What is that? How does that look? And I'm telling, if Biden wins Texas, that becomes incredibly hard for President Trump to win.
That's ballgame. No,
it becomes incredibly hard. And that's why we talked about this whole week is that there are still plenty of shots for President Trump to win this election. But every seat that Joe Biden wins, it just you take it by 10% to 9%, because I think Nate Silver from 538 put President Trump's chances of winning at like 10%, 12%. Every state that Joe Biden wins that Hillary Clinton didn't win in 2016 lowers that percentage significantly. And when we talk about like losing Texas, that thing goes all the way down to like 1. I don't want to say 100% because not everything's 100%. Things can happen, but it dramatically goes down. So Texas is going to be a big thing to watch out for. And the reason being is you want to think like Texas, you think conservative, you think Republican. Texas has fantastic cities. I know a lot of my friends have moved to Texas. Like a lot of people I know have moved to Texas, have moved to the Austin area, have moved to the San Antonio area, to move to the Dallas area. Same thing with like moving to Colorado, moving to Denver. Like people are moving into these, very similar to like this whole area that you guys live in right now. No one lived here 20 years ago. Like there's like people move down here for various reasons, whether that's good jobs, good schools, whatnot. And that's what's going on in Texas right now is it's becoming a less of a conservative area and more of a diverse area. Austin, Texas, I've never been there. Heard it's a fantastic city. And it reminds me a lot of Madison, which I've heard reminds me a lot of Madison, Wisconsin, which I've been to several times, which again, Madison, Wisconsin is very different from the rest of the state of Wisconsin. It's kind of how Raleigh, North Carolina is different than your Fayetteville or different from your Harnett County or your Johnston County. It's just a different life. Or even where I live in Fuquay. It's just different. It's a little different.
I've got a couple things for you for El Paso, and then I want to keep moving west and go to Arizona for a moment.
Okay.
El Paso, just kind of like we talked about with Florida, different time zone than the rest of Texas. By the way, I have driven from Houston to El Paso, and that takes forever in a day. But when you get out to El Paso, those votes are tabulated a little bit differently, and they take a little bit longer to get in. As you see that now we're finally starting to get into 73%. Earlier in the night, they were worried about those votes kind of banking in later on, and can be a late push for Joe Biden. A couple things about El Paso. There was not a lot of early voting in El Paso, and so a lot of that's going to be day of votes that get counted. Also, they're starting to see, and this is on a national level, the different predictors are starting to say that they think that there will be a larger Hispanic vote nationwide than African American vote.
That's interesting. And that Hispanic vote, while the Democrats have been very secure with the Hispanic votes, what's the most interesting is that when you talk about the state of Florida, that's not the case. Because when you talk when it comes to the state of Florida, that Hispanic vote is so diverse. It's basically there's subgroups, subsections of just the Hispanic voters. And they're so diverse in what they care about, what they believe in, and where they came from. You're talking about a lot of the Central American countries, and that they're polling a lot more for President Trump. And that's why Florida is close. And honestly, that's why Florida will probably go to President Trump because of that diversity of that Hispanic vote in Florida, which is different than the Hispanic vote in Texas and the rest of the states out west.
speaking about out west, let's bring Allie in for just a minute. Allie is our Arizona correspondent, and she's going to be able to talk to us about a Senate race out there with an astronaut, and that just
Yeah.
Allie,
So
just about what's going on in Arizona.
right now, Arizona hasn't had anything reported just yet. The polls only closed about 45 minutes ago. We'll probably be hearing things in about 20 or so more minutes. But it's projected that the Democrat will win. As of yesterday night, he had around a 6% lead over candidate Martha McSally. So, I mean, it's projected for the Democrats to win, but we have not heard anything just yet from Arizona.
Good, solid update. I tell you, we can even throw it to you later on as soon as we do hear some solid updates from Arizona, because Arizona is such a key piece of the puzzle in both Vice President Biden and President Trump's path to try to get to 270 electoral votes. It's also, as far as the Senate is concerned, which we'll pull up in just a second, absolutely crucial to either party feeling like they have a shot at gaining control of the U.S. Senate. Allie, is there anything you'd like to tell us about either candidate, whether that be the Democrat Mark Kelly or the Republican Martha McSally? Anything about either one of their backgrounds?
Yeah, one of them is an astronaut. Mark Kelly was a NASA astronaut a couple of years ago, and he has now decided to run for the Senate.
And I think that's absolutely fascinating. Not only Mark Kelly as an astronaut, but his brother Scott Kelly was one of the astronauts that went up into outer space for a year. And the two of them were able to have that experiment that NASA did on what it looks like for an entire year with identical twins. And so that was absolutely fascinating.
You're a big fan of astronauts.
I am an astronaut kid right now.
You're a big fan of astronauts.
I will fully admit to that. The right stuff through Disney Plus and National Geographic. It's got me there. It's at some point, if tonight gets too stressful, I might throw Apollo 13 on for a little bit. Tom Hanks always just kind of soothes me right down. But also, Martha McSally is not your typical U.S. senator either. She was just appointed to the U.S. Senate by Arizona's governor to fill John McCain's seat.
Yeah. She's they called it, she was going for redemption because she did lose in the last election she was in. So then she was appointed to the Senate. So now she wants to get her her redemption in Arizona and trying to win this time over Mark Kelly.
Fantastic reporting. Great job, Allie. Allie, we will go to you later on in the night when we start to get some harder numbers out of there. And I feel like this is actually going to be a big piece around 1040.
Yeah.
That's going to be a huge piece to the election night puzzle. So great reporting. Thank you so much. And we will hear from you again soon.
Okay, see you later.
You know, as we were talking to Allie, you and I both got the same information different ways.
Yeah.
And that is kind of how crucial Colorado is becoming and what Colorado is actually doing. So let's look at Colorado. One, because they have called Colorado for Joe Biden as far as the Electoral College is concerned, which is not surprising, but they called it so fast that means that the Senate race, is starting to lean more and more and more towards former Governor John Hickenlooper.
Yep.
Which is one that Democrats expected to pick up. But if it goes this early, that will be kind of a big deal.
No, I mean it's going to be a big deal. I mean it is leaning right now. A couple other things to watch in the Senate race, because we talked about how there's more elections going on besides just the presidency. That North Carolina Senate race is getting a lot tighter, and we've talked earlier today is that there was a belief that there was going to be a whole lot of down ticket. And what's really important with down ticket is basically you're going to vote Republican, and you're going to vote Republican your entire way down the ticket, or you're going to vote Democrat and you're going to vote Democrat all the way down the ticket. So I was curious. I was looking at the election results right now. Cal Cunningham is still leading, but it is a 48.3% to a 47.5%. So not a massive margin. He's got about 2,320,000 votes. Now you compare that to President Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden's got 2,429,000 votes. So you're talking about there's a decent part of people in North Carolina that voted for Joe Biden, all right, for presidency, but decide that they want Dan Forest to be their governor.
Yes.
Or not Dan Forest, I apologize, but Tom Tillis to be their governor. Tom Tillis to be the senator, not the governor. We'll talk about the governor's race later. But no, I mean that's the interesting thing is that I wish that there was statistics, and it's something that I'm going to look for once this election is over. Is this talking about like how many people is when we talk about North Carolina, how many people voted for President Trump and voted for president, and then Dan Forest, and then voted down, take a Republican, and then how many people sort of zigzag their way through.
Right.
And like, what does the voting turnout look like? Because we talked about how the last election, Dan Forest, when he was running for lieutenant governor, had a lot of votes compared to President Trump and Roy Cooper. Had a lot of votes as a lieutenant governor. That's why he was kind of considered a shoo-in for this governor's race until COVID happened and he made some remarks that made his life a little bit more difficult.
So I tell you, before we get into the governor's race, let's kind of go back with what Allie was talking about. Let's go and kind of talk about the U.S. Senate.
Okay.
Because that is going to be a huge factor, and that's why I thought it was perfect that Allie came on when she did by letting Colorado go to John Hickenlooper. Because now here's our actual map of what we know. The difference is when we toggle over to a forecast, the whole magic number is getting to 50 or getting to 51.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're able to do that, Colorado was one that Democrats felt like they needed to pick up. If they ever pick up Arizona, then it really gets down to picking up Montana and North Carolina. Let's go ahead and put that back in the toss-up. But that's going to continue to make things tight. It's really going to come down to Montana and Maine.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those are two states that we're going to talk about a lot more.
And Maine, which was really interesting, is that how much did President Trump really want Susan Collins to win? Because Susan Collins is not the most friendly person to the Republican Party.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, she's still a Republican. And so that's where you have to sort of play that. You had to play the balancing act of just like, we're hoping that she wins, but maybe not going to do a whole lot to help in that process. It's going to be a lot of what he says and not what he does type of thing. Because again, they how much political capital do you want to win in a seat for someone who doesn't fully support you? Like Susan Collins, who's kind of that Republican senator, but really, is when there's a close vote or a party line vote, she basically votes with the Democrats.
All right. No, I think it's great things to bring up, and I think it's about time for us to start to focus on the Rust Belt for a little bit. Now, what we're able to do with the Rust Belt is, since all three of those states are so closely tied together, we're going to do kind of two things at once. We're going to go ahead and bring Willow Jones into the fold. She has a lot of reporting on her plate tonight.
Yes.
Willow is going to try to give us an update not only on Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, but try to do all three of those. It's quite a juggling act that we've given you tonight, Willow. Are you mad at us, or do you feel like you're up to the task?
No, I feel pretty good. So
good. Well, I tell you what, I will fully admit I was a big fan of the split screen earlier as well. So we're going to bring my favorite neighbor in, Alex Watson. As soon as Willow's done, he'll kind of be able to talk about some more local things as well. So once we kind of get all four of us on there, and then things will look a little bit cleaner. There we go.
Chick-fil-A Alex.
That's my kids do know Alex as
Chick-fil-A Alex.
Alex from Chick-fil-A. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Quality job. Willow, where do you want to start us? Do you want to start with Michigan, or which state would you like to start?
I'm gonna start with Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. All right, let's talk about Pennsylvania.
What's going on in Pennsylvania so far?
Pennsylvania's pretty mixed all over the Biden has been campaigning there for the week leading up to the election. So he's going to get there, and currently he has 54% of the vote leading.
Okay, we're having a couple of technical difficulties with Willow for a second. Gonna have to get our tech crew to hop on that real fast and see what they can do with that.
So let's bring Alex in. And Alex, you're covering, I believe, the General Assembly.
Right. Well, man, I think what Willow was saying first, just real quick, why Joe Biden was spending so much time in Pennsylvania. is because both campaigns know how crucial it is to their success. But also, I mean, this is where Joe Biden was born. And Joe Biden likes to talk repeatedly about how he's Joe from Scranton.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal for him. And so it's not going to be like losing Delaware, which is no chance that Joe Biden loses Delaware.
No.
But
Man,
that's
that would
kind
be
of
bad,
his,
though.
that's his second home.
Yes.
And so that's kind of
He was there
personal
this morning.
for Joe Biden. Exactly.
He was there this morning or last night. He basically went from Scranton to Delaware, where he's watching it at his home the election results. But no, I mean that's Pennsylvania is going to be key to this. Again, we talk about. I'm repeating things that have been said 1,000 times. Pennsylvania will be key for the whole election. But I'm really curious about this General Assembly because that's one of those things that 270 to win. Washington Post, they're not going to dive deep on General Assembly in North Carolina.
No, so let's talk about the General Assembly, and then we'll kind of come back to Willow for a little bit. All right, Alex, what's going on with the North Carolina General Assembly?
Good evening, guys. It's great to be here. So it's important that we should define a term, and that term is the trifecta status. And that means that one party is controlling who's in the governor's office, and that same party also has majorities in the state Senate and the state House of Representatives. Now, North Carolina has a divided trifecta. So the Democrats have ownership of the governor's office, and because Roy Cooper is the governor, he's a Democrat. The Republicans have a majority, however, in the House of Reps and the Senate. So it's going to be it's basically just going to come down to who's going to be able to either keep North Carolina as a divided trifecta, or they're going to maintain, the Republicans are going to be able to make it a full trifecta for them, and they're going to be able to.
No, I think
have that
point, because pretty much most of y'all's lifetime here in the state of North Carolina, and Republicans have been able to hold all of those levels of power.
Yeah.
From 2016 up until recently, or even before that, really, before 2016, really is what I mean. With Pat McCrory in the governor's mansion, and then Republicans having massive majorities in both the North Carolina Senate and the North Carolina House. So much so that even once Roy Cooper was elected as governor in 2016, they had veto-proof majorities.
Supermajority.
Exactly, same term. And so that meant that even if Governor Cooper was to veto something, they would be able to override it and keep trucking. Now those levels of power have continued to come down even more and more and more. Now, as far as redistricting is concerned, would you like to take a minute and kind of talk about why it's so important who controls the North Carolina General Assembly in 2020 as opposed to 2018 or 2022?
So the census information comes out next year. So North Carolina will redraw its districts once again. We've done that several times the last couple of years because our courts have made us do. But let's just talk about Apex when we talk about redistricting and drawing the lines. Well, we were in class last week and we were talking about that if you're looking at downtown Apex,
yes,
all right, and you look where Scratch is, and then you take the skate park and you take the fire station, those are 3 different districts in Apex alone. And when we talk about the amount of growth that we've seen around Apex Friendship High School, all right, all those houses weren't there 4 years ago. There was these massive neighborhoods that were just getting built. A lot of you guys may live in these houses that weren't here 4 years ago when the election was back in 2016, and definitely were not here 10 years ago back in 2010 when I graduated high school. And that's where we talk about these people are moving down here. It's that same thing we talked about when people moved to Raleigh and then went to Cary, and then the Apex became was 20 years ago. All right, and then you see that spread to Holly Springs. And I was talking to our SRO officer, Officer Stone, and he was talking about you're never going to meet someone from Holly Springs that Holly Springs that is from Holly Springs. That's where their family is from. They're from Holly Springs. You're going to see that in Fuquay, and you can see that in Apex, but you don't see that in Holly Springs because the amount of people who have moved down. You think of your 12 Oaks neighborhood. All right, all those houses are newish, and so the amount of growth that's happened in Southwest Wake County. all right, is massive. This is why you guys have so many high schools here, so many middle schools here, so many elementary schools. That's why several of you have probably gone to different elementaries and middles, and maybe this is your second high school that you've gone to. And so that's the reason that we have to redraw these lines. Now, in order to redraw lines, that means we have to take populations and we have to make it somewhat even. How those lines look, though, North Carolina has not always been great at that. There used to be that line that made it all the way from Charlotte up to Greensboro.
Well, let's actually talk about that for a minute, because once you win in 2020, then you get to set those lines for the next 10 years. And you don't just get to set the lines for the congressional map. Alex, whoever wins those General Assembly races, they get to set their own lines. And so if everybody will look here up in the corner, when you look at our kind of split screen here that I love so much, you look at the lines inside of Wake County. Those are your current lines right now for the North Carolina House. And if you think those lines look normal, then you have a different definition of what normal looks like, in my opinion. Because gerrymandering happens on the national level without question. But gerrymandering on the local level is even a more impactful piece here. And so if you'll see Apex here carved up, you will see North Carolina 41, 37, and 36, all right there in just a little bit of space. Just carved up with surgical precision almost. Alex, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us with the North Carolina General Assembly?
I think that's an important topic to talk about, just redistricting, because Apex in the last 5 years has exploded with population. And I know that there's a lot of people that have moved in from out west or from up north, especially, just for, just how jobs have grown. And I think that'll definitely change the demographics and especially the political demographics of how this is all going to turn out. And I think that, if whoever wins kind of decides who it is, or whoever wins is going to kind of shape it to their own liking, and it'll definitely look a lot different. Still super jacked up, but it'll definitely look a lot different than.
No, that's perfect. Thanks, Alex. Willow, how you doing over there? Is there anything you'd like to add about the Rust Belt, and then we can go from there?
Yeah.
You're kind of still cut, but let's try.
So, yeah, for people that talk about the things from there, been focused campaign a lot in the past week leading to the election on Pennsylvania, and most of the population is going to go for Biden, and currently get about 40%.
All right. Hopefully that's coming through clear for everybody else.
Because it's not coming through.
Willow, what we're going to do is we're going to have you kind of go through and restart something, and then see if we can have you join back. And Willow, you hop back in whenever you feel like you've got it going a little smoother, and we'll have you give us some more updates. Because honestly, we can talk about those three states at any point.
This is delicious.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you to my wife, Dana, for bringing apple cider donuts out here. Mm-hmm. I've never been treated so good in my entire life. You have to come over more often. All right. Thanks, Alex and Willow. We really appreciate it. Now, I think we should kind of take a minute and kind of recap for a minute now that we're back up to the top of the hour.
Yeah.
And let's go through and kind of talk about where the race stands right now. And there's a couple of interesting things that come into play when you do look at the map. Mm-hmm. When you go through and you look at what the map looks like, there's a couple of little things that jump out at you. And for me, it's these dots in Nebraska and these dots in Maine.
Yep.
So what Maine and Nebraska have decided to do, and the only two states that will do this, is they will go through and they actually split their electoral votes. They will give 2 votes to the majority winner of the state. So for Nebraska, for example, let me pull this up for everybody. In Nebraska, we are all pretty confident that President Trump will win the general vote in Nebraska. The tricky part then becomes, and therefore he'll get 2 electoral votes. They feel confident in Nebraska 3, and eventually they'll call Nebraska 1 for President Trump. It's Nebraska 2 that is going to be a lot more interesting, and that's Omaha, and those are those 3 congressional districts. And so Peyton Manning's favorite district of Omaha is the one that's going to be a little bit trickier to watch, because that's a single vote that could matter. If we get down and it's 268, 269, 270.
Which there's a decent chance that this is now the fact that how Florida is going.
Yes.
How Texas is going.
Yes.
And how Georgia is going. It is going to be a very tight race. It is going to honestly be what happens with Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And that's why the Rust Belt. And you're talking about, if Joe Biden loses like a state like not Mississippi.
Michigan.
No, but if he loses a state like Minnesota, then he's going to have to make up some state somewhere. Which you're running out of room when we talk about the electoral college votes and needed to do that. So again, this is kind of like a lot like 2016, where you're starting to see things go in the direction for President Trump. Now, the big thing that's different in 2016 is right now is North Carolina is leaning towards Joe Biden. That's his saving thing, because if he can get North Carolina, that gives him a little bit more cushion. That gives him some cushion that he did not have, that the Democrats did not have back in 2016.
Yes, he's got to pick up one of those states.
Yeah.
On the flip side, President Trump has to carry each one of those states.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's going to come all down to. Maine has almost the exact same thing. Maine has the at-large states. I've never been treated this good in my entire life.
I think she's putting it on for
She
the show.
is. Would you like some coffee as well?
No, I'm good.
Yes. Ooh. All right, we need to take a brief break here for a second from national politics and talk about town councils.
Okay.
So I know we haven't gone too local yet.
We haven't gone at all
Apex's
local.
mayor race does not happen on the same cycle as a presidential race.
Okay.
But a lot of towns are not just run by their mayors; they're also run by a conjunction of mayors and town councils, just like here in Apex.
Yes.
Dana and I have a friend that we met since our freshman year of school. Dana's way better friends with Christina than I am, who just won a seat on the DC council.
That's big time.
That's big time.
Yeah.
And so shout out to Christina Henderson winning that seat on the DC City Council. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty impressive.
No, that is.
And so I'm trying to.
And you were making fun of Furman earlier. So I said City Council.
I will make fun of Furman 100% of the time.
That's fine,
and I'm fine with that because there's nothing you can ever make fun of Northern Michigan University about.
You went to school in Canada.
I went to school above Canada.
Now, kind of going back, Maine has the exact same thing. Maine, 2 at-large votes, and then 2 congressional votes there.
Yep.
They're the only states that do that, and we'll see if those actually do come into play. Let's go through and let's kind of zero in on one of these states and continue to be closer and closer and closer.
Okay.
Which state would you like to focus on first?
Let's see. When we talk about the president or the Senate or the House.
So let's talk president, and then let's translate into Senate. Because honestly, the House has not seen any kind of major shift so far.
Let's talk about Wisconsin.
Okay.
We'll zoom in on Wisconsin. So now Trump is winning Wisconsin 50% to 47%. About 30% of the votes have been in so far. The map that I'm looking at right now is currently hasn't been super updated. Besides that, you have it's the Madison, sort of Milwaukee areas have been the 2 that's been reported so far.
I've got you. So we've got a third of the total vote in.
Okay.
And so you actually brought this up earlier about the amount of votes from outside of Madison.
Yes, Dane County.
In comparison to the amount of votes outside of Milwaukee.
Yes.
And so these are ones, look at Milwaukee's already at 87%. That's a big deal. Now, when we go through and we look at these trends, when we're looking at Wisconsin, what kind of areas should we be focusing on when we're looking at Wisconsin? And I'll leave the map up here for you.
The big thing that I was listening to a lot before I came over here is you talk about suburbans. Like the suburbia is going to decide close elections, which is very true. This is going to end up being a very close election. Suburbia is going to decide that. But I would even say take a step further. It's going to be your small city suburbias. It's not so much of like, because Raleigh for North Carolina, your Cary, your Apex is your suburbias. Now you want to think of what is a Fayetteville suburb. What is maybe like a Greensboro, a smaller section suburb? What's a Wilmington suburb? So for that, it's actually my wife's hometown. In Green Bay is like that suburb of Howard, of Pulaski, because when you get from Green Bay to the rural area, it takes about 10 minutes. You hit farm fields, you hit dairy farms, you hit cow farms. How is that region going to vote? And that's really nothing. That's not going to come out Democrat for Joe Biden. But how many votes can they take from that area? And then also at the same time for Madison, Milwaukee, how many votes can they drive up in those two areas?
I'm gonna break in just for a minute here.
Okay.
WRL is reporting that Governor Cooper is going to win re-election.
There we go.
And so NBC has called it, and WRL's putting it out, and NBC's putting it out. Right now, when you just kind of look at the detail here, with 52% of the vote to 47%, with 88% of the state counting, that was enough. And so they are putting Governor Cooper winning re-election in the state of North Carolina. So I'm always going to try to give you balanced, unbiased news. So I've given you something good for the Democratic Party. On the flip side, though, to give you kind of the Brent Musburger take,
Okay.
the friends out in the desert have started to give Donald Trump the betting favorite to win re-election.
The Friends, are you talking about in the great state of Nevada?
I am.
That good old the
Our
Raiders.
friends out in the desert.
The Raiders location. Sorry, Canada. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he came out and he won Florida, he won Georgia, he's ahead in Texas right now, and that's the big thing. I think that puts the betting favors not to go down that road. Thank you to our colleague that shared that information.
I actually had a separate friend text me that.
We got two friends.
Yeah, and I tell you what, he gave me some more information that they're saying it's minus 475 right now.
Interesting.
That's a big number. So
no idea what any of that means.
We'll see how
Never
that
bet
plays out.
A single thing about it. But let's talk. I want to talk about Dan Forest for a second.
Sure.
Is that I think Dan Forest, like I said, if you 4 years ago, I would even say if you take this time last year, Dan Forest was a shoo-in. And I think this is a really good example is that there hasn't been somebody when we talk about governors that has been like the shining example of how to deal with COVID. Like there's no one that says we all should have been like this person or we all should have been like this person. There is not that governor out there. Mike DeVine from Ohio was kind of that first governor besides Cuomo that like shut down the whole state. DeWine, sorry. He shut down the whole state. North Carolina fought back. And I think what happened was Dan Forest, very early on, back when we just didn't know that much about COVID, he kind of went very opposite of Roy Cooper and was hoping that that was going to help him win the election. And that kind of backfired on him, and he had to sort of respond to a lot of that. And we saw that in the debate, that he had to kind of respond to his reasons behind it. And so now, how does this all look like when we talk about it? Does this mean Joe Biden wins North Carolina? As Roy Cooper does. Well, what is does Cal Cunningham now win the Senate seat from North Carolina because of Roy Cooper early call? That's the stuff that we're going to look at for the next probably hour or so and look at and see and get some updates about.
I'll tell you what. Let's dive deep into that actually for just a little bit. And one way that we like to do that, support local news, and we're actually very lucky here in the Triangle to have WRAL and their fantastic news coverage. So we're going to go over and we're going to focus on what WRAL is reporting right now. So when you look at, they are calling the governor's race for Governor Roy Cooper. But when you look at the totals here, I think you bring up an excellent point of what does that mean to the U.S. Senate race that currently has Tom Tillis in the lead? And what does that mean in the president's race, which now President Trump has pulled ahead with probably 30,000 vote lead. It does mean when you're talking about those split ticket ballots, that does mean that there is a substantial, at least a few thousand or a few 100,000 right now, actually, that went Cooper, Tillis, Trump, or some variation of that. Now, again, we're going to see where this last little bit of votes are. I think that is substantial. Of when we look at the map, kind of where those votes are and where we're missing on those votes. But let's kind of take that back and let's look at North Carolina for a little bit.
Okay.
And so when we kind of zoom in here just on North Carolina itself, we'll be able to go through and look at the president tallies, governor, which has already been called, Senate, which I don't think it's called for quite some time.
Yeah.
But congressional races as well. Not too many of them are close. But I think the second congressional district, where Kendall is in, Deborah Ross has a substantial lead. And honestly, a lot of that comes after the map's getting redrawn to where there were more competitive districts here in North Carolina. Also, I think it's fascinating. Look at the Supreme Court race. When you're looking at Chief Justice, you've got Sherry Beasley and Paul Newby in almost a dead heat, with Sherry Beasley only up 40,000 votes.
That's interesting.
A very, very tight race as far as those races are concerned. And actually, we're going to kind of go to Congress here for a little bit as well, so we can kind of see the rest of those votes. Because you and I have both picked the North Carolina 8 as an important swing district in North Carolina. And one that was leaning Republican, probably will continue to go Republican.
Yeah.
But it's showing right now, again, with 88% of the votes counted, that Richard Hudson is holding a steady lead of 20,000 votes or 6 percentage points. So I think those are going to be some very interesting numbers to continue to look at as the night goes forward. We can actually toggle over, since we're kind of focusing locally here for a little bit. In the North Carolina Senate and House, just real briefly. And then do you want to go to the Biden and Trump camps again for a minute?
Yeah.
Again, lots of change already. But when you look at our district, most of our Senate District 17, Sam Sears, the incumbent, looks like he's got a pretty comfortable lead to re-election. And then we're going to kind of toggle over to the North Carolina House as well. Similarly, when you look at House District 36, 37, and 41, it looks like the 3 Democrats who are incumbents are looking comfortable leads, other than House District 37 with Sidney Batch, who has a very, very tight lead at the current moment. And we've actually, as soon as the election season is over, we're going to try to have Representative Batch come talk to the class a little bit, kind of like we've done with Mrs. O'Day.
Yes. I think what's really important with the Senate is that you got to talk about, they're just like WRAL, just like Associated Press. There's people in the room that feel comfortable calling this the governor's race early. As you can tell, that we only have about 80% around that in for the president and for the Senate races. And even when we talk about like school board elections in Wake County, that stuff's got to wait until the very.
We haven't talked about school board much yet.
We haven't talked about school board.
Too many things going on.
Those kind of elections, your school board election, your agriculture commissioner, like the stuff at the very end of the ballot, that stuff's not going to get decided.
Next time we bring Alex on, that's what we'll let you
that's not going to get decided until tomorrow or the next day, because that's where like every little vote's going to count. Because here's the thing, unfortunately, there are some people who will go to maybe the top 4, and then they just turn the rest in. Or you're like Governor Baker of Massachusetts, who didn't even vote for the president, or he left the top half blank.
Really?
He didn't vote for 2016 either. He just left the president's race blank.
We were talking about a Republican governor of Massachusetts.
Yes. So 2 Republican governors have come out against and have openly said that they voted against President Trump, or not voted for President Trump, basically. And that was Governor Baker, and I believe it was either the governor from Maryland or the governor of Vermont have come out and said. It was the governor of Vermont, I should say, because I sent you that on Twitter.
Yes, you did. All right, so let's go ahead and bring in our investigative reporters
Yes.
on site. Lena, Leah, you guys are all on now. How are things looking? Lena, we'll start with you. How is President Trump's team feeling now that they're starting to get some really good reports out of Georgia and Florida?
Well, so as the hour has progressed, a lot more votes have came in for him. And the map that I'm looking at right now, which is the Associated Press map, Texas right now is in favor of Trump. So is Ohio and Pennsylvania. Georgia and Florida still are too. And North Carolina is turned in favor of Trump as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely he's made up some significant ground in a bunch of those states. You're looking at him. One of the maps I'm looking at is everything sort of starts leaning red a little bit, and this is where you always have to phrase it the map I'm looking at, because it's all the maps are subjective to what their information is. Now, what are some of the key states again? What I should say this is, what state could President Trump, out of your Wisconsin, your Pennsylvania, your Michigan, your North Carolina, could he afford to lose if he had to lose one?
Well, just from like what I've heard based on before tonight, I'd say he could probably lose Pennsylvania, since he was already predicted that he would lose it earlier on, and like that Biden would have more of a lead than him. But I think Pennsylvania and North Carolina, he could probably, one or the other, he could probably lose and still win. But I think any of the other ones he needs to hold on to.
Nice. Any other surprises or shocks you expect for later this night? What's your prediction?
Well, so far, just looking at the map and seeing all the votes come in, nothing really that surprising has come in so far, because like for Republican voting, most of the time Central America is heavily Republican, so like Nebraska and Kansas and Wyoming have already been called for Trump, and that's not really much of a surprise. And I just think more of the surprises would be all the closer states, like for Ohio if he won that, Pennsylvania and Texas.
Nice. Okay. Very good. What about Joe Biden? What do we got to say about Joe Biden right now?
You know, we're focused on Ohio, Wisconsin, North Carolina and Pennsylvania. We're keeping a good eye on those. We're also excited to see how Arizona plays out. We're happy about our dunks again, New York. We're very happy about that. But overall, we're leading in some of. It depends on the map. We're leading in some of them, but some of them we're more trailing behind, and so we're just trying to keep a good eye on the different states right now.
Nice. What's your key? So I'm thinking right now for Joe Biden, it's you're sweeping the Rust Belt. You're adding Ohio in there. You're adding Minnesota. You're adding Arizona. What's going to be your key to how this rest of the race is going to go? Which out of those five, or I should say six, is the state that you're watching for?
I think, well, obviously Pennsylvania, but then also Ohio is looking good for us. I think it's more in general, but I would say like Ohio, Pennsylvania, but overall the whole Midwest area.
All right. Very good. All right. Thank you. If we get some breaking news, or if you see some breaking news, you let us know, and we'll bring you back into this fold. As you can tell, this race is going a lot. President Trump's going to be pretty happy with how it's going right now. He's pulling away in Florida. He's pulling away in Texas. He's pulling away. He's got a lead in North Carolina right now.
Right.
It's now, again, we're back to that Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Arizona.
And also, it's something that each state is a little bit different on when they count what votes.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that we thought there was a decent chance of tonight. And a lot of these very tight battleground states, especially throughout the South, when they go through and count those votes, when they go through and count in the mail-in votes, when they count their absentee votes, that makes a very large difference.
Yeah.
So thank you, girls, for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll be talking to you again soon.
So I just want to take the second, and what I did is basically we used 270 to win a lot in class, and I'm just going to reset the map because I think I hit something. So
Sure.
I'm going to turn everything. I'm going to turn those states that we talked about to neutral, and I'm just going to go through the map for a second. So let's going to talk about.
Hang on, just a second. I can meet you.
We can do a visual representation.
I can.
So I think it's safe to say. I mean, we're not CNN or Fox News or ABC here, but I'm pretty confident saying that President Trump's going to win Florida. I'm pretty comfortable saying that he's going to win Georgia. Okay. I feel comfortable saying he's going to win Iowa. Okay. I'm going to throw Iowa in there,
Sure.
and I'm going to leave North Carolina. I'm going to leave Arizona. I'm going to leave Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. All right. Let's take the main district and let's just put that blue. All right. So right now I'm looking at a map that has 224 to 214. All right. Okay. If we have Arizona is leaning towards Biden right now.
Sure.
Put him up there. He's now at 235. We now have the 6 states we're looking at. Let's just put it to a President Trump wins North Carolina. All right. So we now have 235 to 229. Same thing we're talking about. This is really close. All right. Minnesota has been a stronghold for the Democratic Party. All right. We're going to pop that over to Democrats. That's 245. It's 245 to 229. It's your split up of those states. And so what vote count do you get? So if I give you Wisconsin and Michigan to the Republican Party, does not get them to the 270. All right. If I put them over into the blue, all right, 271. All right. So right now, entering when we have that last, so everything's equal. All right, we've given you North Carolina to the Republican Party. All right, President Trump has to sweep. Or I should not say has to sweep. He has to win a Wisconsin, a Pennsylvania, or Ohio. All right, and Pennsylvania's got to win 3 out of 4 of those. Okay. All right, while Joe Biden only has to win 2. Yeah. This is where when we've talked about all week, and we're probably going to get really annoying right now. This is what we're talking about that's super important, those 3 states. All right, because let's just say that Ohio right now is that
just in case we lose anybody, I think I'm going to reset the internet. I can't get any browsers up for a minute.
Oh no.
So if we lose you,
we'll be back.
Oh, it's not different. No.
Okay. But let's just put Ohio over into the Democrats section because I think the last time I looked, Joe Biden still he still had a chance to win Ohio. All right, that was still a possibility. Again, it's the puzzle right now, and this is exactly where we're talking about in the White House, and then also where in Delaware you have Joe Biden's people and you have President Trump people. This is what they're doing. They're probably not doing it on 270 to win, but they are looking at the picture and being like, all right, we have a chance here in Wisconsin, we have a chance here in Michigan. We're worried about Pennsylvania. What can we do in Pennsylvania to just sort of like try to, where do we need to send our lawyers realistically is a conversation that's probably could be happening in both campaign rooms. But they're looking at the big picture map. And it's really just a puzzle. And it's that puzzle to 270. What gets you 270? Yeah.
Good.
Are we crashed? People are just doing emojis in the chat. There's a lot of emojis. No, we're not crashed. Well, you're still... Can't see the screen. That's why. Can you see us still? We can only see you guys now. All right. I'm gonna just start talking like we.
All right. I think we're back. No.
now entering, we have that last.
I got no internet.
I still got internet. That still has internet, so we're still streaming.
No, 'cause that's a part of this. It's a run from this.
The camera?
Yeah, 'cause nothing runs the studio. Huh? Go ahead, talk about it. No, but I mean, basically, because my internet just crashed while I've got. Oh, what's going on?
Chat kiss. I gotta go to the bathroom.
I scratched it. I even just like restarted my computer. Yes. Huh? You have what?
My laptop is up.
His are.
Okay, start doing it from over there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you don't need mine.
Are we like crash?
Y'all's two are still good. You might as well just like close out and come back.
Just freezing down here.
So, like I just tried and like reset my laptop. I mean, if you can log into our, I don't remember what I set up the thing as.
Let's just do this.